And a major win for the White House. The Supreme Court voting to reinstate key parts of President Trump's travel ban. The justices will hear the full arguments on the merits of the travel ban in October. Joining us now is Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. The travel ban takes effect Thursday. Dr. Gorka, explain what we will see when that happens.
Well, you'll see exactly what the president's been arguing for since almost his first week in office. We're going to have a halt to the influx of individuals from the 6 nations that were the hotbed of terrorist activity, places such as Syria, where we have ISIS encamped, building their caliphate. So there's going to be a moratorium on that ingress. Unless there is some kind of connection, such as a familial connection for those individuals to the United States. So we've had national security trump over political decisions, and that's the bottom line, Dagan.
Dr. Gorka, what do you make with you mentioned the exemptions? It exempts, say, college students, people who've been hired by companies here in the United States, people with blood relatives in the United States as well. And you heard from the conservative justices, namely Clarence Thomas, and then agreement from Alito and Gorsuch, that they took issue with that. That it would have been better and more easily, it makes it harder to enforce this travel ban because you have those very exemptions.
Well, look, let's not make a story out of something that's not really a story.
No, I'm just asking you, I mean, that's just a point of fact, and yeah. I'm just asking your thoughts on it.
No, I mean, but the fact is the original executive order, both versions, had a passage on exemptions. So this fits into that if you want to talk about exemptions. But we'll deal with it. The fact is it's not about the exemptions, it's about the broad spirit of the action, which is to make sure that the events we've seen happening in Europe don't happen on the streets of the United States. And a 9-0 decision with no dissensions is a massive, historic decision in terms of validating our analysis. So, Dagan, we are very, very happy here in the White House.
Dr. Gorka, I want to move on to the White House issuing that new warning over Syria. Last night, Press Secretary Sean Spicer released a statement saying, quote, the United States has identified potential preparations for another chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime that would likely result in the mass murder of civilians, including innocent children. It goes on to say, as we have previously stated, the United States is in Syria to eliminate the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. If, however, Mr. Assad conducts another mass murder attack using chemical weapons, he and his military will pay a heavy price. Dr. Gorka, what is that heavy price?
We don't give our game book away. I'm sorry. We're not going to give our play away. That's bad when you're playing poker. It's very bad when you're doing geopolitics. But the bottom line is that when the president draws a red line, he means it. He took action with those 59 cruise missiles. Now he sent a very clear message. We know what you are doing, and you should not do it. Otherwise, there will be consequences. But I'm not going to talk on live television as to what those consequences will be. I'm sorry.
Well, can you speak to General Jack Keane was on earlier, and he said that there's 6 air bases that should be, in his opinion, should be taken out if indeed this happens. 6 air bases in Syria, and that would be one potential move by the United States.
General Keane is a fine patriot and a fine military man, but I'm not going to comment on what he thinks we should do. And we're leaving that up to the theater commanders to do what they have to do. They're trained, they understand it, with the president's direction, because remember, the Syrian strike was the president's direction. He was serious. We send a message, and now we're sending another one. We know what you're doing. Don't do it, Damascus.
In terms of the statement from Sean Spicer last night, would preemptive action be an option for the U.S., knowing that Bashar al-Assad was ready and to attack his own people with chemical weapons, that something like that was imminent? Would we act preemptively?
Dagan, you're very persistent, and I doff my cap But the fact is, we've had 8 years of telling our enemies what we're going to do. That ended January 20th, 1201, when Donald J. Trump became the commander-in-chief. We are not going to discuss concrete options. The president is given those options by his sterling national security team, headed by General McMaster, but we are not going to say what we will or will not do, because then the enemy uses that against you. That's not how we played in this White House, I'm afraid.
Well, and this enemy is not just Syria, Dr. Gorka. It's also Iran, and it's also Russia with their support of the Bashar al-Assad regime.
Well, yes, I mean, this is the reality, that we're sending a very clear message, not only to the nation that wants to execute a weapons of mass destruction attack, but to those nations that sponsor it. Iran has been a state sponsor of terrorism since the creation of the republic. The fact is that Russia now has to look at its own internal red lines. Just how far are they prepared to sponsor a regime that has been as heinous as the regime of President Assad? You're absolutely right. This isn't just about bombs on the ground. It's about sending a clear message to those who support a regime that has been culpable in mass murder.
Sebastian, do you expect that this will come up if President Trump meets with Vladimir Putin next week at the G20?
I'm not going to talk about what the talking points are for the president, but given the significance of Syria, I think it's a reasonable assumption that there will be some discussion. If there is occasion to meet and talk about national security, then this has to be at the top of the agenda. I would think so, yes.
Dr. Sebastian Gorka, good to see you as always.
And
Take
you.
care. We will see
Thanks.
you soon.